Good evening and welcome to the April 2022 Gamedev meeting for the International Game Developers Association Twin Cities chapter. My name is Beth Korth. I am the chair of IGDATC and your host for this evening. Oh, gotta switch tabs. There we go. So the intro, this is what you can expect from tonight's meeting. This is the intro. We'll wrap it up with some plugs and announcements from the board. And if you have any announcements or plugs that you would like to share, just ping the IGDATC board on our Discord or mention it in the stream, and somebody will help me line that up for when we get to the plug section. So tonight we have two presentations. We're starting with Jules Porter. She's going to talk about the rise of Elder Battle, and then we'll end the night on Ryan Blaha with Git in Unity, which I am looking forward to because you can never get enough Git. And after the meeting, we will join in the voice lounge, either the Minneapolis or St. Paul room, and we can chat and continue the conversation there. So welcome, good evening. We are an inclusive and safe environment for everybody, so please be respectful of everyone. Let's just have some fun tonight. We do have our safe space policy listed on our website, which you can check out if you need to, but it's basically just be a decent human, please. And IGDATC is run by an all-volunteer board. Myself, Mark, Eli, David, Zach, and Peter, all wonderful people. If you would like to get involved in the board or any other kind of volunteer with us, please send us an email or ping us on Discord and let us know. We would love to expand our events to include anything that interests you. So IGDA is our parent organization. We would like to encourage you to become a member. We do not require membership for any of our events, but we do kind of benefit a little bit. If you note us as your local chapter, after we get a certain number of members, we do get some monetary kickbacks and stuff like that. And there are membership benefits such as discounts to GDC and sometimes some cool computer swag. You can check out all of the benefits at igda.org. So our regular events schedule, we run the second, third, and fourth Wednesday of the month. You are at the Game Dev meeting the second Wednesday, and I host our industry and community presentations. Anything Game Dev related is welcome. We have 30 to 90-minute presentations, usually 2 a night, and we have all sorts of interesting, fun stuff. I have a cool sneak peek at next month's preview a little bit later in the slide deck. And then the third Wednesday, we do Twin Cities Playtest. That's hosted by Lane, Dale, and Mark, and they just interview local devs and play their games. So you get to kind of check out stuff that's not released yet, tell them what you're thinking about how their progress is going and stuff like that. So it's a benefit for both the developer and the people who are playing. And then our fourth Wednesday is the Minnesota VR and HCI, which stands for Virtual Reality and Human Computer Interface. Zach and David run those events, and then this month, let me get to my note here, they're going to go back to Puzzle Fox Park, which is the place that the January meeting was, and they'll have 3 quick presentations, one by RJ White about Vive Flow development in the App Store, and then Mark Jensen will talk about Focus 3 and Oculus for business alternatives. And then our own Zach Went will do a GDC and VMed 22, which is a clinical uses of VR conference. He'll talk about some highlights from those events. And news, plugs, and announcements. So next month, we're going to have the Stout capstone thesis showcase again. It's been a couple of years, I think, maybe since it's been in person, but I'm excited because I think even virtually this is going to be really awesome. We have had Stout come out and present their capstones a few times, and it looks like there's going to be 8 teams this year. So it's going to be the entire session. We're going to have one of them is going to share their thesis and that explores dating and breakup simulators. That's right. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing for some of our community that follows that sort of stuff. And then the 8 teams will present their senior capstone projects, and we can talk to them about it and maybe get some links to be able to play them, but I'm not sure. I haven't gotten that far in the discussions yet. And then, surprise, happy fun. Mark and David and everybody have been working really hard, but especially Mark and David, on getting our new website design done. So this is just a preview because it's not quite ready, but I wanted to generate some hype. So this is just the major landing page like preview for our upcoming new website. Let me see. I'm going to peek and see, did we get any plug requests? It does not look like it. So if you do have something that you would like to plug next month, please contact us. If you have a game being released, if you're interested in talking about the development process, if you have an event or a meetup or something cool that you saw, just let us know. And I'm going to move over to give it up to Jules Porter for her presentation. Looks like you are muted, Jules.
Can you hear me this time?
Yep, you are all good now.
Man, I gave you guys such a big hello, introduction, welcome, and of course I'm muted. I feel like those are hashtag 2022 problems. But just hello again. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to share my game and my work with all of you. This is only my second time using this particular platform, so please forgive me if there's a few hiccups. But I'm excited to show off some of my art and a bit of the game. So let me see here if it works for me to share my screen with you. Okay.
It looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. Just hang in there.
Oh, sorry about that. I think
Nope, you're good.
I got totally kicked out of Discord for a second. Let's try this again. Okay. Are you able to see this presentation?
I can click on it and see it. I think, is that working for us, Mark? All right, yep, you are good, Jules.
Okay.
We
And
did
then what
lose your
happens?
video though, if you want.
Oh, that's okay. I feel like this is the best we're gonna get right now.
All right, sounds good. Take it away.
All right, so here we go. So what I really want you guys, I hope that you will love, is all the artwork that I put in here with love. So I am Jules Porter. I'm happy to present to you Seraph 7 Studios and the game that we are currently working on, The Rise of Elder Battle. Now, our beta is actually ready for us to show. However, I did promise to have a special revealing for the Friends of Seraph 7 community. So hopefully you guys will join again in a couple weeks when I actually have that public beta showing. So here you're not going to see the actual gameplay footage, but we're going to go through a lot of the features, modes, characters, and some really cool things like that. So I'll start with telling you a little bit about myself. Well, I guess giving you the rundown. So we're going to quickly tell you a little bit about myself. I'll tell you about Seraph 7 and why we are so excited to be a mission-driven company and a Minnesota public benefit corporation. Then we're going to go right into Elder Battle. We're going to talk about the modes, the features, the characters, and what I do to try to give this a little bit extra authenticity. And at the end, we'll nerd out a bit. So if you have any questions or anything like that, we'll take a little bit of Q&A. So this should be a lot of fun. If you're not having fun at any time, please let me know. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised here in the great state of Minnesota. I am a licensed attorney here in the state of Minnesota, in addition to being a game developer and a very proud Marine Corps veteran. A lot of people don't guess that about me. So. And a little bit about my background. So I do have an aeronautics degree. I went to seminary, so I have a theology degree. I went to the University of St. Thomas here in Minnesota for both law school and to get my MBA. My coding language is C++, and I'm currently using the Unreal Engine. And I've actually been using the Unreal Engine 5 since the beta release for that last year to develop Ultimate Elder Battle Royale.
Hey, Jules, I just want to
Yes.
break in. Your slides are cut off on the stream.
Are
If
they?
you want, we can take a quick intermission to fix it. Or
Okay. Are you able to see them this way?
yeah, I can see the whole thing that way.
Okay,
When
it's not
you
cut off?
presented, it was cut off on like the left half of them.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Okay, we'll do it like this because I want everybody to see the full slide.
Okay.
Sorry
Sorry.
about all that.
Sorry.
Thanks everybody for bearing with these technical difficulties. That's the fun of, I think, live streaming sometimes. All right, so I'll just go back. So you can see just the fun pictures, right? I mean, we really care, I think, about pictures. So as I said, from Minnesota, this is just a little bit about me. And this fun picture was taken when I was a law student and I had a chance to go to the United Nations in New York for a week. That was one of my favorite experiences of law school. I'm very involved here in the local community. I'm also on the MSP Esports Alliance, which is something that might interest all of you. I also hope to join your community if you'll have me. You guys do some great things. And I've won a lot of awards, so the community is very excited about this game that I'm about to share with you. They're very excited about the work that I do. And I just love all the love that I'm getting from the community. If you ever want to nerd out with me, here are the things that I love to talk about. Everything from the law to AR to VR, futurism and equity, of course, entrepreneurship I love. So let me tell you a little bit about how Seraph 7 Studios got our start. All right, as you all probably have known by now, especially for those of you who live in Minnesota, there's been this huge social justice crisis that's been rearing its ugly head all across the nation, and it has especially hit us hard here in the state of Minnesota. And I actually started my law school career right after all of the events of Ferguson, and I was actually inspired to start studying for law school in the LSAT because of the death of Trayvon Martin and the impact that that had on me. I felt extremely powerless to be able to help my family, to be able to protect like my brother. I was like, man, my youngest brother is a Yale graduate. He loves to make like gospel rap music. So what happens if he's walking around at night wearing a hoodie on his way to meet with his friends to make some kind of gospel rap track, and somebody sees him, makes all kinds of assumptions, and ends up killing him? That would be, the biggest tragedy. And I just felt like I didn't have the power to stop that from happening, for holding people accountable, and I just needed more knowledge and more things to add to my skill set. And I actually watched a TED Talk by a woman named Dr. Atika Tyner, and she said that the law is the language of power, and there it clicked with me, and I decided to go to law school. One thing I realized while I was in law school, however, was that, man, it's so much more than holding people accountable and changing laws and changing policies. There was an issue that had to do with something that's just inside of, many Americans. I remember when we read the grand jury transcripts that they released after they decided not to indict the officer Darren Wilson who killed Mike Brown. And when I read those transcripts, there was a statement that he said when he testified. And he said that before he shot this teenager, that Mike Brown looked like a demon. And why that really stood out to me is because it stood out to some of my peers and some other people that I actually looked up to. And to them, they thought that that statement justified it. For some reason, they could relate to that. And that's when I realized, man, so it's not just that we need more accountability and more laws. We need to establish a baseline that all people are human beings worthy of dignity and respect, right? The Black people are not demons or monsters. You have to start seeing us as human. And then I started just looking at things in my own life to see where can I start with this. And I have been a lifelong gamer. And Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, if you guys see this here, was actually one of my favorite games. And of course, it perpetuates, though, all the stereotypes that we see throughout all forms of media, but especially video games. In video games, only 3% of the characters are Black, brown, and native. And this is the way we're portrayed. We're portrayed as mobsters, drug dealers, gangsters. And even in movies or games like Mafia 3, we can be a reformed gangster or a reformed mobster. But it's like we can never really have these roles where we're just the pure good guy who slaves villagers and saves dragons. And really, it wasn't until perhaps you had Bayek of Siwa in Assassin's Creed Origins, and then, of course, Miles Morales in the most recent one, where we finally have a game in 2021 where my nephew, who's 14, can actually see himself as a hero in the games that he plays. Before that, there were none. These were the only people that he saw in video games that he played. So that needs to change, especially since 80% of Black youth play video games. And as we all know, this is really the way, or kind of the best form of media, where we can actually walk in somebody else's shoes. And it's powerful. The other problem, I know I mentioned to you guys that I am a Marine Corps veteran. It's I would never go into combat or anything just half naked. It makes absolutely no sense. And yet, in game after game, women are hypersexualized. Um, and there's always these really odd character design choices where like the female character walking through the jungle has to be wearing high heels, or for whatever reason there's some type of like boob window. So even if it's like a hazmat suit, as I'll show you guys a little bit later, for whatever reason her chest is still exposed, like just really weird things like that. And the fact that globally about 80 or 48% of the players are women, we definitely, this is a missed opportunity. We need to change this. We need to show more roles and just more things about who women are and who we are, in this hero space and in this fantasy space. We're more than just your sex symbol. I, for instance, would love to see more characters who I can relate to. But man, can you guys even name a Black female playable character? I'm pausing there. But one of my favorite games, Assassin's Creed Liberation, that has a Black female character who's positive, who is fully clothed. The problem with that game is that they force you to dress up like a slave in the game. And if you don't think I'm telling the truth, whip out your PlayStation, your PSP, and I think they did a remaster for PlayStation 3, and play that game and see how jarring it is on those like 5 or 6 occasions where the game forces you to dress as a slave, and then see if that actually has anything to do with the rest of the game. And so it's just really, really odd. But Black women and just Black people in general are not really in this space for us to be able to tell our stories. When I actually looked at the stats of the video game industry, less than 3% of the video game workers are Black or brown. Less than 25% are women. And when we talk about who's in the C-suites of these companies making decisions, they don't even keep stats on how many Black or brown people or women are part of the executive team. When we look at that a little bit deeper and we ask why, we have to think about, and just here in Minnesota, well, what kind of schools are Black and brown students attending? What are some of these issues? And of course, in Minnesota, we have some of the worst educational disparities and economic disparities in the nation. And it's been like that for a very long time. Here in Minnesota, the median income for a Black family of 4 is $31,000 a year. For a Native family of 4, $27,000 a year, right? But for like a white family of 4, it's like $83,000 a year. It's like it's a huge jump. And so when we look at the types of schools that our kids are going to, they're going to schools where the teachers are less prepared. They don't actually have access to advanced STEAM courses, especially, and they don't have that encouragement to really go into these STEAM careers. But when you contrast that with some of these entry-level video game developer jobs, it's like, man, if we could teach Black and brown kids and more girls these skills, we can take them from families that are making $31,000 a year and prepare them for $78,000 a year entry-level jobs. And so that's what my company here seeks to do, where we're tackling all of these issues with one solution, which is our company, Seraph 7 Studios. So we're putting out more positive Black and brown heroes. We're showing more of our imaginations, more of the folklore that really connects with us. We have diverse leadership. We're hitting these stereotypes head on. And of course, our goal is to really expand the imaginations of who a hero is. So if I ask you, can you name a Black female superhero besides Storm? And I gave you like 5 seconds, you probably have a hard time naming one. And that's part of the problem. And so we wouldn't just be a regular video game company if we didn't actually try to address this full problem. So the full problem is, hey, we need more games where we can show Black and brown people as heroes, but we also need to develop kind of a pipeline of excellent, diverse tech talent. And so we have a 3-year program that's tuition free for students in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So the goal is for these students to get college credit and high school credit. And it's a project-based program that focuses on career readiness. And this is really important because the students, not only is it important for them to get this hand-on experience, and this will teach them everything they need to know about how to make a console video game. So these are video games for PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo. The students learn everything from animation, 3D modeling, storyboarding, script writing, cinematography. They're going to be hands-on every day with the Unreal Engine 5, just really diving in and giving them those skills that they need to be prepared, whether they want to go right into a career or if they want to go to college. And then we're going to have apprenticeships, which actually start this fall, for adults who have a lot of passion, who want to get into the video game industry, but just need somebody to give them a chance. And this is a paid apprenticeship. So the goal is, in a few years, when I walk in the middle schools and I walk in the high schools, and I ask these kids, hey, can you name a black female superhero besides Storm? They're just going to start naming off my characters, which will make me so, so proud. So when we look at the video game industry as a whole, the area that Seraph 7 is entering is the console market. So as many of you know, that means we're making video games for the PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo. We do hope to also release on PC, but we're focusing on consoles first. And when we look a little bit of like what does the console industry actually look like, well, the whole video game industry, right? 2.5 billion gamers. But what some things that a lot of people don't realize is that the average video gamer is not actually white when you're looking at this globally. And the average gamer, millennials, right? We're all grown up. We're in our 30s now. We're middle management, right? And so we need to also take that into account when we're making games. And I believe about 68% of millennial video gamers play video games with their kids. So that's important too to take into account. All right, so now let's skip over to what we're actually working on in some of the games. So first, what I'm working on right now is Ultimate Elder Battle Royale. So this is a really fun game where old people who are like 80 years old have superpowers. They're in retirement homes now, but they're still kicking butt. So this is really fun, and we're going to dive deeper into this in just a minute. But first, I just want to show you this kind of Seraph universe of games that we have planned up in the queue. All right, so War in Heaven. So the goal of this game here is to show a more multicultural view of heaven. Like I remember I had a chance to go to Rome and I studied art law and international human rights in Rome. And it was fantastic. But it's like all those images of heaven, we don't include Native Americans, we don't include Asian people, we barely include black people in that idea of heaven. So in this game, this it tells the story of when a third of the angels decided to rebel. So it's like the rebellion that was led by Lucifer. So people get to play as angels. You get to play from the perspective of 7 different angels. They'll each have a different ethnicity, which will be really, really fun. And then there will be a multiplayer where you can actually make your own angels, team up with your friends, and take down epic demons the size of planets, which I think is just going to be fun. And was that a Latin phrase? You'll have ultimate cosmic power. All right, so this game, baby, this is an amazing game. So this is actually what I believe is it Starfield, or what's the name of the game Bethesda's working on right now, where they have basically an RPG in outer space. That's the same vein of this game right here, which is awesome. So just imagine if Star Wars had more than 3 black people in it. So they always have, these planets of all these alien-looking people, but I was like, why can't we have a planet of black folks? So this is what we have here with the baby. And the way that it kind of ties into the universe, which is really interesting, is we're thinking, all right, so there's life on planets outside of Earth. And if we look at kind of the theology tying it into War in Heaven, right, here on Earth we had original sin. But imagine if there was a planet where there was no original sin, right, where the people were the people that they were intended to be. But after 100 years of living in this paradise, they had to leave their planet, go out to the universe, and see if they were worthy of returning. So this character here is the 17th child of her father, and some of her brothers didn't return from their journey. And so she's now going out into the universe, trying to find her brothers, and all the decisions that you make affects the game. So it should be really, really fun. All right, this game, Songbirds. This is really, really fun. So I love jazz and blues. So some of my favorite singers are Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Nina Simone, Dinah Washington. And I was like, man, what if these women kind of had their own planets or their own universes all themed around them? And what if we had a game where you could actually play through their music, kind of like an interactive music video, but not as bad paced as was it Rap of the Rap? What was that rap one? I forgot the name of that rap game. Rap of the Rapper or something like that. But the on that game, the timing was a little bit off. But in this game, so you go to the Dinah Washington planet, and Dinah Washington is singing "This Bitter Earth." So at that moment, the Earth comes up and starts attacking you, and so you actually have to listen to the lyrics of her song in order to figure out how to navigate this interesting landscape. And what's really cool is that all of the artistic styles and all of the colors that are used are going to vary per woman's planet based upon her personality, as well as matching the song. So this is going to be really, really fun. Harriet. This is a game that so many people are excited for, and we're teaming up with the Harriet Tubman Museum in order to make this game a reality. So this will be Seraph 7's first virtual reality game. But not just that, it's not just going to be some pure educational game for everyone. This is going to be a horror survival game. So we're actually going to put you in the thick of it, right? So you're going to have to run from dogs. You're going to have to figure out how to navigate the Underground Railroad in a split second. You're going to have to make decisions on who to bring with you to freedom, right? If you take the mother with her baby and you guys are hiding under the floorboards, what happens when the baby starts to cry? And so, gameplay wise, it's going to be a lot like The Last of Us. But I also think that sometimes real world is so much more scary than zombies. And I also want to show people why Harriet Tubman is a true American hero. So this is going to be a fantastic, fantastic game. And hopefully by that time, we'll not only have the PS like VR2, we'll have like a PS VR3 or something like that. I really want the technology to improve so that people can get that full heart-wrenching experience. All right, so just a couple more before we get into the characters and get more into Elder Battle. So War for Earth, this is a follow-up to War in Heaven. So this actually plays off of the theology of what if the very first gods and goddesses that were worshipped on Earth by the very first civilizations were actually fallen angels. And it kind of plays off of a lot of the art that we find from these very first civilizations. And we see that a lot of the deities that they worshipped actually had wings. And so it's really, really interesting. And so what it means here, it means that Zeus, it means Osiris, Isis, Odin, all these characters are actually real, actually exist, and are fallen angels. And you're sent from heaven to come down here to neutralize some of these quote gods and goddesses. It's really, really fun. And then the tribulation wraps up this trilogy. And so here, I know hopefully we all know the mythology of Odin and Ragnarok, and how Odin basically takes or has the Valkyries take people to Valhalla, where he's building an army to fight against Surtur in Ragnarok. So just imagine if Ragnarok was basically the Christian version of the tribulation. And here Odin is this fallen angel, right, in my universe, gearing up to fight against basically God and God's army. And so it's really cool. But here it makes basically the fallen angels to the humans that are kind of left on the earth, the good guys. And it kind of makes God and his army that's actually coming down to destroy the earth, in this particular story, perhaps the bad guys. So it's really, really interesting. And it's a cool look, I think, at the tribulation and at a lot of how mythology and theology can kind of intertwine. All right, so enough of that. Let's get to the very first game. We're zooming into Elder Battle. And this character here is Dakota. And one of the reasons why I really love Dakota is because, like I said, why don't we have Native Americans in heaven? That'd be cool. And I was also like, why don't like Native Americans, we never think of them as being like a cyborg or having androids, you know? So I was like, all right, so my character, Dakota, he's totally a cyborg. But I also don't see cyborgs as having like clearly like metallic parts. You know, I think that when we actually get to the point where we have mechanical prosthetics, that people will want them to look as much like human skin and the human body as possible. And so that's what we have here with Dakota. He actually is a cyborg, but he did his best to have like different parts of his body replaced to look still as human and lifelike as possible. All right, so when we dig into what Ultimate Elder Battle Royale is, so imagine, right, you have superheroes. They are in their 70s and their 80s, some even in their 90s, right? They've already taken down all the intergalactic threats. They've killed all the demons, they've done all the good things, and now they're living in retirement homes, which I think is fun. So they need to cure their boredom, they need to stay in shape. And in my universe, the older the characters get, the more powerful they become. So these people are like in their peak superhero-ness, but they have no outlets, right? Except for there is something kind of brewing in the background. So it's a really fun premise. Imagine if Batman was actually 80-year old, had a weaponized walker, and you basically got Elder Battle Royale. So what's fun about this game is we're working with elders for the voice actors captions, which is really, really fun. And if you've never worked with elders before, just know that I think there was a TV show where kids say the darndest things. I believe that elders, because they don't care anymore, so they're just gonna say whatever. And we definitely encourage them to do that. We want to get it all on tape because it's absolutely hilarious. And so we're trying to give a different take on heroes and also a different take on fighting games. Um, in most games, I'm thinking of like Tekken's and the Mortal Kombat's. You have a few female characters. You may have a couple black characters. Generally, the black characters will be a black man. Generally, the black man will be a boxer or a dance fighter. I'm thinking like, was that Eddie? And was Eddie in Street Fighter? You guys have to remind me. The character Eddie, who was like the Brazilian character. Anyway, so but I wanted to give more roles to people of color in the game, and I also wanted to make a roster that's balanced with male and female fighters, just to show more looks at who female heroes really are. And then, of course, the characters have all different shades of melanin, as you'll see, and are from all across the globe, so that when the game launches globally on consoles, everybody will have a character that kind of looks like them that they can relate to. And that's really, really important to me. So the other thing that's really important to me is I hate loot boxes. I hate microtransactions. I'm a gamer. It's so important that that is not in there. I want to be able to earn everything by just increasing my skill and playing the game. And so I want to reward people that think like me and who enjoy playing the games and actually winning things in games and not paying money in games. The other fun thing with this game is if you guys think of WWE, the World Wrestling Entertainment Federation, they all have theme songs for their fighters. Like I think we all remember "Can You Smell What the Rock is Cooking?" So in my game, each of the elders will have their own theme song. And so what that took was finding local artists of similar ethnicities as the characters in my games to ensure more authenticity for their theme song. But of course, this game is all about being over the top and hilarious as well. So we had to sprinkle a little bit of that fun in. So I'm also not sure if a lot of you remember Def Jam Fight for New York. It was a game that came out for the PlayStation 2 and GameCube back in the day, but it was one of my favorite games. And so I kind of took that inspiration, and instead of having this be kind of a Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter type of game, I made it more open arena type, where you can actually walk more around the arena, pick up things that the audience may throw into the ring at you, and things of that nature. So for those of you who don't know Death Jam Fight for New York, it's kind of like maybe one of the wrestling games mixed with a fighting game, but with a bigger arena, a bigger fighting area. Okay, so when we talk about modes, this is where I had a lot of fun and where I wanted to be really inclusive because I want to bring more elders as well into gaming. So we'll start with just the regular story mode. I mean, story mode is just what you think. It's the regular mode where you play through the stories of each character. You can play single player or you can play co-op with your friends. A lot of fun, and hopefully, where the stories will make you laugh, as well as kind of teaching a little bit of cultural competency at the same time. Now, arcade mode is a little bit different. Story mode is, of course, going to be scripted. There's going to be some fights that may be 2-on-1 and all sorts of things. But arcade mode is the classic. I pick my character, you pick your character, let's battle. Um, Royale mode is a bit fun too because this is kind of a survival mode, but it's not necessarily the battle royale mode that we're all a bit sick of. So this kind of royale mode is, you might pick your friend and you guys go together and you fight, and there'll be a lot of other heroes, but they're not necessarily going to be fighting each other. They're just going to be trying to take you down. So this is going to be a bit of a challenge for this royale mode. And if you and your friends happen to actually beat these other superheroes, Then you and your friend then have to face each other because there can only be one winner. So it'll be a bit of fun. Tower mode is just what you think of it. There'll be 77 floors, no elevators, no jetpacks can be used because, yes, some of the characters do have jetpacks. So this will just be pain. It's a brutal survival mode for people who really like a challenge. And there'll be some cool things that you can win by completing the tower mode. Elder mode is something that's really, really different. So this is a mode that kind of slows the action down per se, and it's made to really help build up some of the cognitive abilities of elders. It just give them a fun introduction to games, but it really slows the pacing down to get more elders into gaming. So it's really, really fun. And one of my goals here, so if you guys don't know, video games are amazing, right? Especially for our elders. And it's just too bad that a lot of them don't play. When I was in law school, I was a part of the elder law clinic at the University of St. Thomas. And so I got a chance to go around to the Twin Cities and help vulnerable adults and people in nursing homes a lot of times. And what I learned is that when we put our elders in nursing homes, we're often shortening their lifespan. Some of the elders feel, very isolated. They want to be more social. They want to do more things. And video games are one way that we can not only engage their minds, but that they can connect with like this awesome greater community to be a lot more social. Um, and so one of my goals too is to have kind of a PlayStation drive or just a console drive where we donate more gaming consoles to nursing homes to get more elders into gaming, which I think will be really, really fun. Now, there's going to be also a lot of exclusives. So those of you who are here, who are in Minnesota, will have some exclusive costumes and things just for you. The same with military veterans and active duty veterans. And then, of course, love for the players over 70. Yes. And then, of course, the people who subscribe to my newsletter who are a part of what I call the Seraph Nation. So now let's dive a little bit into battle. And Beth, how are we doing on time?
You are doing just fine.
Awesome. All right, so I hope you guys are excited as me to take a look at some of the characters. Now, when the game launches, there will be 20 characters overall. I'm not going to show you all the characters because I want you guys to come back to another one of my talks to learn about more of the characters. So this is just a little bit of a teaser. So the very first character, and what's really cool that I want you guys to know is, even though I'm an attorney and people, can you guys hear me? I just
I
got
can
a.
hear you now. Yep. Did you get booted again?
I did. Do I need to reshare?
I think so. Yep. I don't have it up.
All right. All right. Awesome. Are we back?
I
Sure. Yeah, sorry about that. Oh, so there's a person talking to me, you guys, who can't be heard on screen. So I might sound slightly crazy that I was answering someone that you guys can't hear. Okay. Awesome. He was telling me that the colors were a little bit off. So I just want to check that you guys can see the colors as intended. Okay, let me give that a shot. So what I was just asked, I was just informed again that the colors were still a bit messed up. Something happened that I got booted off, and then I came back in, and the colors aren't showing up the way they should. So let me try to refresh this really quick. All right, so I'm back. If you guys can hear me.
can hear you.
All right, so let's try to share again.
It's thinking about it, and colors are still purpley for me.
Ah, there. Okay. So I was just asked to see if I could share my entire screen. Let me make sure I don't have anything crazy up. No, I don't. Let's see here. Entire screen. It might look a bit meta because I have you guys up on the screen. Did that help a bit?
The colors are right on that, yeah. There we
Okay. Are
go.
you guys able to see the slide?
Yep,
The full
looks
slide
great,
not being cut
Jules.
off?
Nope,
Okay.
nope, it's all there.
Ah, finally. Okay. And are you able to see the change? Nice. All right, everyone. This is the very first character that I made. Her name is Jay. Some people would call it Jai, and I know, but I call her Jay, and I just wanted to spell it that way. So she's the first character that I made when I was kind of working on 3D modeling and working on making characters, and I kind of consider her my avatar. So when I kind of thought, what kind of cool character would I want to be? Of course, I was like, I have to be an awesome woman with some awesome braids who's like sort of a futuristic samurai. Even though I'm not Japanese, I love the history of the samurai and things of that. So I thought this would be really, really fun. And so one thing that's cool about Jay is even though obviously as you guys look at her, she is not, 80 years old. But she's going to be present in all of the games. And in some places, you might have to really look for her, but she'll be there. So that'll be just something fun for folks to look for as you play Seraph 7 games. And I thought it was also fun because when it comes to women and especially black women, we get really lame hairstyles in a lot of games where you get to make your own character because, there's not a lot of black women characters in games. But when I get to make my own characters, I do like to make a character who looks more like me. But the hairstyles that we have to choose from are just, the most bland things that I would never in a million years style my hair as. And so I was like, man, developers put so much time into making like realistic water graphics, but they spend like zero time just getting our hair correct. And so I thought it would be really fun for my first character to have a character who can be expressive with their hair the same way I like to be expressive with my hair. So that's one thing with Jay. Asar. Asar was the next character um, that I created. And so his name is kind of the Golden Man. So his thing is he can turn his skin golden. So think of Colossus, except for with golden skin. He can also fly. He declares that he is the son of Osiris. And if you guys know Osiris, he is the Egyptian god of the underworld. So Asar says that he is his son. And the name Asar is actually the Egyptian version of Osiris. Osiris was, of course, what the Greeks came when they conquered, with Alexander when they conquered Egypt and changed the names of some of their gods. And so his hometown is the hometown in Egypt where they have a huge temple of Osiris. So I thought that would be really, really fun for Asar. Asar kind of has a stoic personality of sorts. Like he believes he's kind of this like demigod. He's a sun deity, but he still loves to be around his people. Like you could see him kind of as a not necessarily a Magi, but for those of you who played Assassin's Creed Origins, you saw that Bayek was a Magi, which was kind of a sheriff of the people. But Bayek did more like community policing, where he would laugh and joke with people and talk with them and really cared about the issues that they faced. And I see Asar having a similar personality like that, except being maybe slightly unapproachable because he thinks so highly of himself. And so his character arc really has a lot to do with Asar needing to be humbled in order to really be a better hero. And I actually have a digital comic book series coming out when the game launches that goes into Asar's background a little bit and tells the story of how Asar was humbled. So this was really fun. I made this graphic a while back for a Throwback Thursday run that I was doing. So this was kind of Asar before I aged him, and then you have Asar after he was aged. And what's really cool about Asar is that his model actually resembles kind of my father's side of the family. So especially my grandfather's father, his name was Vivian Porter. And so I thought it would be fun to kind of make one of my ancestors as a character in the game. And here's another look at Asar. And so these are some of his special moves. He has this hammer fist move, and he has this solar flare kind of move. And this was fun. And one thing, so I know there's this big argument or discussion, I should say, on our video games art. There's actually an art publication called The State of Black Design that is going to publish some of my art, and these are two of the pieces that they're going to publish. So I was just very, very excited to be the first video game type artist that they were going to have in their journal. So I just wanted to share that with you folks. All right, Miss Billy. So whereas Asar kind of resembles my father's side of the family, Miss Billy, the Mississippi Supersonic, resembles my mother's side of the family. So she would fit right in at a family reunion. And so here's a question for those of you. Do you know a superhero from the great state of Mississippi? Hopefully you guys said Rogue from the X-Men because she is from Mississippi. But there aren't that many. So I thought it'd be really, really fun to make Miss Billy from Mississippi, which is where my mother's from. And then I thought about just all the black women that I grew up admiring. So remember when we talked a little bit earlier and I said, can you name a black female superhero besides Storm? And just think about all the little black girls for whom that answer was no. And so the heroes that we had to turn to were our real life heroes. And some of my heroes as a kid were Billie Holiday, Mahalia Jackson, who's a gospel singer, and Wilma Rudolph, who's a track star. Um, and so I incorporated aspects of these awesome people into Miss Billy, including, also my mother's hometown. So I thought it would also be funny for her hometown to put Progress, Mississippi, because I know people don't know where that is. And I put near Tylertown, but I also still know that many people don't know where Tylertown is. So shout out to Tylertown and Progress, Mississippi. So here I wanted to show a little bit of the evolution of Miss Billy's character model. So if you look on the left, that was actually the first model that I had for Miss Billy. And what I decided with that, I was like, man, she looks more Harriet Tubman-esque there than perhaps Miss Billy. So I'm actually kind of, I've been playing with that model a little bit for the Harriet Tubman game. And then we have kind of the evolution to Miss Billy. And I want to talk about some of the problems that I came into creating Miss Billy. One of those problems, looking at the left side, was I didn't realize why her chest was so unrealistically huge, right? Because I had done all these things in developing the model to make it as small as I could. And what I realized was that the software I was using actually by default put breast implants on the female models. And so there was like this whole series of things I had to go through to remove the breast implants to give Miss Billy a more realistic look, which was crazy. And then here was a hazmat suit, right? So this was I looked at different clothing that I could license, and I found this hazmat suit. But in the picture of the hazmat suit, it shows you a fully covered hazmat suit, right? And we see this often when it comes to armor, and you have armor for the male character that's super bulky and fully covers him. Then for the female character, it's like bikini armor. It was the same deal here. And so like when I actually checked out the clothing, there was this whole boob window. And it's like if this was supposed to be a hazmat suit, that defeats the entire purpose of the suit. Like it was just so ridiculous to me. So these are just some of the things that I came across, really trying to develop female characters and realizing some of these things that I had to do. So that each time now I make a female character, I have to go in and make sure there's no breast implants on her. And so here's just after I gave Miss Billy her breast reductions and did all these things. These were the final kind of models. So I was very proud here. You have Jay and you have Miss Billy. And at this point, these were my two kind of black women heroes that I created. All right, a seer. Now, those of you who know me, and I know many of you do not, would know that I am a huge God of War fan. Okay, I was slightly disappointed though when they said they were going to go to Norse mythology because I was loving the Greek mythology. But I soon fell in love with God of War. I fell in love with Norse mythology. Then, of course, I played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, right? And so I was like, all right, I love this stuff. So I made a seer, and I wanted to make him a rock star. So if you could see, there's a little bit of the Beyonce hair, because I was like, all right, one of my frustrations when I play video games is that they make the one black character pretty bland, boring, the same personality in every game. It just frustrates me. So I was like, I'm not going to do that, right? I'm going to make my white character. He is going to be amazing. He is going to be awesome. He is going to be Beyonce-esque. So here we have Aesir, the retired rock star. He is from the Faroe Islands, which is an autonomous territory of Denmark. and it's partway between Norway and Iceland. It's really, really, um, I thought really, really interesting, and it was one of the staging points for the Vikings back in the day. And so with Aesir, with this personality, he's actually very charismatic, right? So I've actually been doing what I can to tweak his model for his model to look a little bit more charismatic. But here you kind of have him in his like superhero mode where he's trying to get serious, um, which I thought was fun. And this was actually, if you look to the left, one of the earlier models of Aesir that just looked a little bit too goofy for me. So I had to play around with it to get him to look a bit more serious. But I still am working on him to get him to look a bit more charismatic. And then in the game, of course, hopefully we're still trying to find the right musical talent to be the voice of Aesir. And one thing that's really, really cool, so Aesir kind of has the powers of Odin, Thor, Loki, all the Aesir gods kind of in one. And so one of the things he does in his bio, where I put his notable feats, he likes to ride along with ambulances, and then he'll like shock people, right, to like get their heart starting and things like that. And then people report that they're able to sing better after they've been shocked back to life by Aesir. So it's just something that I thought was kind of funny. All right, Manny. So Manny is actually my most popular character worldwide. So every time I create a character, I kind of do a small like digital focus group, so to speak, and I release the character model and the bio in the community where this character is from. So like with Aesir, I released his character model and bio to focus groups around like Scotland, Denmark, Norway, and things like that. And so with Manny, I released his character model and bio around Fiji, Tanzania, Kenya, South Africa, and places like that. And he got over 400,000 likes, and I got thousands of comments and emails and inboxes, and people just really love Manny. I had to use Google Translate because there were so many messages coming to me in other languages that it was really, really awesome. And one of the reasons why I wanted to make Manny is I said, man, I never really see people with albinism represented in the comic book world. The ones that I have seen are always villains. I mean, even in the Matrix, if you guys remember Matrix, there were like the two like ghost type twins, those two albino guys who were really, really cool. But of course, they were bad guys. So it's like we need to show albino people. There's so much to the stories of albino people all throughout civilization and so many hardships they've had to deal with because, right, we see that in human history. If you're a bit different, you have to deal with a lot of the BS. And so I wanted to basically give a positive look at people with albinism. And so Manny is one of those. And he's really fun. So he's a very, very talkative character. He is never short for words. He was born on kind of the scenic night where a volcano erupted, and people took that as a sign that Manny was somehow a prophet or somehow sent by God. And in the story of kind of Manny's life, that actually saved his life because he was born in a place where people thought that folks with albinism had like magical powers and they would use their bodies or in rituals and things of that nature. So it's really, really kind of dark. And so Manny, something awesome had to happen for him to be able to survive. And then he was allowed, or his family was allowed to take Manny and basically raise him in the Serengeti. So Manny gets along really well with animals. He's also one of the best martial artists in the Seraph universe, mainly because he had to learn how to fight in order to survive. So one of his cool superpowers is sort of like you guys could probably think of Taskmaster, but while he's fighting you, he can actually learn your fighting style and use that information to defeat you. And then here's some fun art. So another thing that I'm really into, I love to read books on Afrofuturism. I love the Afrofuturism community, but I don't see a lot of people with albinism represented in Afrofuturistic art. So I wanted to kind of have Manny more part of that scene. So here's one of the pieces again for the State of Black Design journal. And then Manny too. So what I thought would be really cool was to pair Manny with Asar, right? Both of them are African men, but with two very different experiences. Um, being African men. For Manny, he is basically an African man with no melanin in his skin and the things that he has to face with that. And then there's just a lot of statistics that about 90% of people with albinism are legally blind. And so I took that with Manny and kind of made a character where, during the day, he can't really see, he is legally blind. But at night, he kind of gains this supervision where he actually can see a person's aura and things like that around him. I also made him like an amazing painter, even though he is legally blind. And I thought it would be really fun to team Asar and Manny up in a superhero team because they kind of cover each other's weaknesses. So Asar is most powerful during the day when the sun is up because that's how he draws his power. He's very much solar power. Whereas Manny is best at night where he can actually see better than he can during the day. So yeah, also look out for that comic book of Sun and Moon. And so what I thought was really cool was I took that solar flare photo of Asar, and I was like, okay, what would it look like if Manny were looking at Asar? And so this was kind of one of my interpretations of this is how Manny sees the world, which I thought would be really, really fun. So a person with no melanin to really see the world with such vivid color. All right, we're nearly done here. So we have Granny Kill. So again, I want the white folks in my universe to be fun and exciting and super super interesting. And so Granny Kill again, just this fun playing with colors and just making her very very different. So she is actually Druid. She grew up basically kind of in the wilderness, loving the wilderness. She's known as the survivor, and she is a breast cancer survivor in my universe. So that's why she likes to wear these really ornate helms that you guys will see on the next slide. And also, nobody knows where Granny Kell is from. They think somewhere in Ireland, but they have absolutely no idea. She is basically that wicked witch in the woods type of character, like but that you have to go see, right? If you need that special item or you need that special thing for your quest that you can't get anywhere else, you have to go see Granny Kell, right? And then you have to do things to appease her to get her to help you. So she's kind of a neutral type of character in the universe, and I actually have her fighting style being a little bit of a much different fighting style than everybody else. And as far as her superpower, she's a magic user, which is really really fun. She's the most powerful magic user in the Seraph universe. So here's some of her really cool helms. Like her character model is just so fun because there's so many different things that you can do with her. And she also likes to walk around barefoot. That was the other thing that I thought would be really fun with her. So here's a couple other looks at Granny Kell as I was also designing her fight style. I don't know if you guys remember this game called Dynasty Warriors. I think we're at like Dynasty Warriors 9 by now, but I think like it was like Dynasty Warriors 3 or Dynasty Warriors 4. They introduced this character named Pang Tong, and like his fighting style is so different than everybody else in the game. And so that's kind of what you're getting with Granny Kell. So she's an unpredictable type of character. Nazca, man, Nazca has taken me so much when it comes to her character model. Trying to age her, as well as man figuring out just her clothing, right? Because a lot of her character model kind of deals with the Nazca lines, if you guys know about the Nazca lines in Peru, and just showing that through her tattoos as well. So anyway, Nazca, the immortal stone, from somewhere around Cusco. And I thought it would be really fun to say, she was from this area before it became a desert, because now it's arid, but while she was there, it was a vibrant place to live. And we actually have her where she's either the daughter of one of the founders of Cusco, or something of that nature. And so she actually has the ability to control Earth. So if you guys think of like Avatar: The Last Airbender, she would be an Earthbender. But in addition, she was also able to turn herself to stone as kind of a survival mechanism. And so she's actually survived for a very, very long time throughout human history. She was Incan, and so she was actually there when the Spanish showed up to basically conquer and destroy the Incan Empire. And she actually, when she was reawakened out of stone, because think about it, right? The Spanish show up, they're killing her people, everything's on fire. She's about to die. She turns herself to stone to save herself. And then when she finally wakes back up, it's like a split second, like no time at all passed. and all of a sudden she's here in 2022, for instance, and the world is just so different. But for her, this was all yesterday. And so she's an interesting character where she basically kind of has a lot of PTSD, even when she just hears people speaking Spanish, right? To her, that was the language of her conquerors, of the people that um, kind of in many ways enslaved and killed her people, right? But today in Peru, what do many people speak? Spanish, and so she's getting readjusted to this new world. So she's really really fun. And so when it came to making her bio, and I had a writing team, and I started with the character model on the left, where you actually see a lot of the red. And in her bio, a lot of the things that came to mind during the brainstorm session had to do with like blood and death and Beatles, and I was like, where is this coming from? And then I realized, well, maybe the team is being led down that direction because of the face paint, because of the redness. So then I tweaked the model and lightened her up a little bit to try to change the way people were perceiving her. You know, there aren't many. I couldn't think of a single superhero who's actually from Peru or is indigenous Peruvian, as Nazca is, and so I didn't want the first, superhero perhaps from Peru to be like some negative character. I wanted her to embody the positiveness or the positive nature of the Incan people. So it was important for me to change her character model accordingly. And so one of the last things that I did was I took these kind of bright, fiery eyes and I made them kind of darker to match the Peruvian folks. So now the next step, I'm still kind of refining her character model, is to figure out, okay, what kind of clothing does she wear? She just can't walk around just with naked tattoos, but I guess she could kind of be like a Mystique type character. If you guys know Mystique from the X-Men series. All right, Juan Uku. So now I'm flinging you back over to Ethiopia. So Juan Uku, she is Ethiopian. Oops, I didn't fix her hometown. Sorry about that mistake there. But she is from Ethiopia. She is actually the tallest character in um, the Seraph 7 universe. And what's cool about her, so this image here was again another image for the State of Black design. And I'm going to come back to it actually. I'm going to switch over to this image first. And so she's kind of known as the infinite tree. Like she's tall, she's over 7 feet tall. And kind of the more angry she gets, she can become even taller. She can actually also stay still for a very long period of time and just kind of revert back to this tree-like appearance. And what's really cool about trees is trees can actually communicate through other trees through their roots. And so whenever there's an issue, whenever Juan Uku needs to basically spring back to human form, she actually gets the messages through the earth to her roots, which kind of reawaken her. And what's also really cool is that if you take a branch of Juan Uku and you actually plant it somewhere else, she will grow given the right conditions. And so going back to this image, this is basically an image, and in my mind, where somebody took a branch of Juan Uku, went to another planet in the galaxy, right, and then planted it, and then Juan Uku grew. And in that, civilization, she became this awesome legend. They built monuments to her, and this is kind of the ruins of one of the monuments that they built, which I thought was kind of fun. And she can fly, so I just wanted to show this picture. It's always more fun if you can fly. Okay, so those are all the characters that I have to show you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. We have the beta coming out very, very soon. So if you want to see more of the characters, if you want to experience some of the gameplay, please go to the website, sign up for our newsletter, and then you're going to hear about the beta as soon as we make the announcement. So please, please do that. And then from there, that's about it. So just thank you so much for listening to my presentation and learning a bit more about Ultimate Elder Battle Royale. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. All right, are there any questions in the chat? I'm actually not able to see any of that to see if there's
just
any
a
discussion.
second.
Okay.
So the stream will have to catch up with us a little bit. I guess. Let's see. What do I have as questions? I felt like I had so many questions for you before, and now I don't. So I guess I'd like to hear more about like how your plans for the like apprenticeships and the student the non-tuition like course class kind of thing you got going on. Do you have like partners for that, or is that just locally, like your studio is gonna do that kind of?
Yes.
Does that make sense? Sorry.
No, no, that's a very good question. Yeah, we actually receive grants from iPhone Women, American Express, as well as the Minnesota Cup, in order to hire our education team to put together the curriculum, put together the program, and build partnerships. Our plan was for our STEAM program for the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders to kick off this year. So basically for the 2022-2023 school year. However, because our game development was pushed back, we wanted to ensure we got our first game out before we started teaching the students how to do this. And so we're basically pushing the STEAM program back another year. But the plan was for us to start the pilot in St. Paul with about 20 students and then go from there and open it up to Minneapolis and the surrounding areas, depending on the feedback that we get from the pilot, which I think would be really, really great. We've also have a really cool strategic partnership with a company called Upstream. And what Upstream and Stream is science, technology, reading, engineering, arts, math. But I might have said that backward. Arts, engineering, math, something like that. But so that's Stream, and so they're upstream. And what's really great about them is they actually have this virtual platform that we would be able to work with them and share some of our classes that would expand our reach beyond just Minnesota to actually the African continent and the South American continent for students there who also want to learn about how to develop video games. And one of the things that we're actually also working on together, and I know metaverse is like the buzzword today, and some gamers like it, some gamers hate that buzzword. But we're basically building a campus. And initially, we were going to go with VR, but I think that I want to wait until VR kind of improves a little bit. So, but it will basically be a video game campus. So think without all the violence, Grand Theft Auto 5, right? That living kind of world. And I think in Grand Theft Auto 5, they actually have a university campus. So imagine that. We're going to have a university campus basically in a video game using Unreal Engine 5. We're going to basically have a dorm. There's going to be a quad. There's going to be the classroom buildings. The students will be able to walk around, engage with each other in the virtual space. They'll have avatars. They'll be able to customize their room. And they'll take their classes, their virtual components of it at least, right there in that video game space. They will also have projects where they're further build it out. So let's say they want to have a skate park. Let's say they want to make something where they can have helicopter rides or whatever the students want. They'll be able to add on to basically this virtual campus. So that's going to be really, really fun. And it's also going to be cool to have that open to students across the African continent and South American continents. And then even from there, let's say students want to have a concert hall where maybe one of the South African students wants to share some of their music and have a cool concert. So all of that will be able to happen. So we're really excited about that. So the actual delaying of the program start another year means that there's just so much more exciting stuff that we can have for program start, as well as have a plan to phase in other components, other curriculum to make this kind of virtual campus even more alive. But here in Minnesota, the students here will also be on site as well. So it'll be kind of a hybrid, a mix of the virtual campus and a mix of coming to the actual Seraph 7 studios, having a desk, and really, learning about professionalism in real time while you're going through our STEAM curriculum. And in addition to having teachers, there will also be social workers and things like that, so that when students are there on site, that the whole student is taken care of, because that's really, really important to us. When it comes to the apprenticeships, we do still plan on starting the apprenticeships this year, most likely in August, and our goal is to start that with two adults in our apprenticeship program, and that is paid. So hopefully we'll get a lot of great applications for that when we put it out there.
Awesome. That is amazing. Let's see if there's questions in the stream here. Furcoat says, Jules, are you too busy to make a writing partner friend? I feel like you just introduced who you are very well, and I think we share a lot in common as storytellers trying to move minds. Yeah, you seem like you're pretty busy.
Yeah, I mean, we plan to have a huge hire in June. And when we have that huge hiring event in June, I do need writers on the writing team. So you could be my friend, yes, but you could also join the team and help bring this to life.
Well, that's great. And I don't know, Jules, if you have time to hang out after the stream is over. We do have Ryan's presentation yet, but maybe we can all chat in the Discord for a little bit. You think you
Oh,
got time?
absolutely.
All right, so
Yeah.
hang around and you can chat with Jules a little bit later. So I'm going to put up the intermission slide for just a minute and we're going to get Ryan set up. Thank you so much for presenting, Jules. I love your work. It's amazing. Um, I can't wait to hear more about it and I can't wait to see the beta. So, yeah, cool. We will chat again shortly. Uh, All right, and so we're back now with Ryan Blaha, who's going to give us a little information about Git. Welcome, Ryan. Thank you so much, and I'm going to just pass it over to you.
Thanks, Beth. Quick confirmation that everyone on the stream can hear me. I know that was a bit of a hang up earlier. All good. Sounds good. So I'll. Okay. So I'm Ryan Blaha. I am a local software engineer for United Health Group. I wanted to talk today about using Git with Unity. And this is kind of, in a roundabout way, an extension of a talk that I did with Lane Davis about a year ago regarding participating in game jams and how to maximize your success in game jams. I know one of our talking points in that particular talk was the use of source control to make the project sharing process a lot easier. And I do remember seeing a lot of comments with some mixed reactions on various feelings about Git. And I do empathize with how overwhelming it can be. I know from a user standpoint, it can be somewhat of a complex thing to try to get involved with. But at the same time, it's hard to sit and watch, people shying away from something so useful. So I will try to lift the veil a little bit and hopefully make the whole topic seem much more approachable. So today, instead of going the PowerPoint route, I decided to try my hand at a practical demonstration. So what I've done instead of a PowerPoint is I've created this doc that is just kind of my outline, and I'll kind of be going through this in real time. I do plan to make this more thorough over time. Git is kind of a broad topic, so I'm not going to be able to cover everything today. Specifically today, I just want to cover how to get your project set up with it, and then maybe some brief examples at the end of how do you make the most of it. I will share this document, the link, so everybody who has the link will be able to see the outline. And then I'm going to be trying to move relatively quickly, so administrators, if there's a question, please feel free to interject. This being a real-time presentation, questions in real time are definitely welcome. So yeah, so again, this is Source Control in Unity by Ryan Blaha. Today's date is April 13th, 2022. Starting with a little bit about me, I am a software engineer for United Health Group by day, and I founded a studio called Crunchbox Games. I use this for working with collaborators to create graphical assets and music and sound effects and things like that to help me work on our first game, Emery. I have brought it to various shows, 2DCon, VGMCon, and such. So there's links to more information here in the outline. If you want to connect at all, I welcome connecting and staying in touch and just asking questions and getting to know each other. So LinkedIn and Discord are probably my preferred ways to connect. So if you're interested in catching up, feel free to let me know. So specifically, what is this talk and who is it for? So this is specifically Git, which is a specific technology, with Unity, which is a specific game engine, with Bitbucket as the service provider. This particular talk does not pertain to Unreal Engine or Perforce. Unreal Engine, of course, being another very popular game engine, which is also notorious for not playing very nicely with Unity. And I do know that Epic Games, the creator of Unreal Engine, actually uses Perforce internally. So they are kind of preferred partners for each other. If you use either of those, I know they integrate really nicely, but I won't be getting into either of them today. This talk is more for non-technical people who are intimidated by Git. Again, I'm hoping to make this much more approachable. And then also for people like myself who have set up repositories time and time again, I wanted to create a nice consolidated point of reference because this is not typically an everyday activity. So just having a kind of a centralized list of steps with some references included can go a long way in helping us get everything set up, the once in a blue moon that we actually do it. I kind of touched on it a little bit already, but Unity and other game engines notoriously do not play nicely with Git. Git is a tool for making software engineer collaboration more efficient. Video games being a particular kind of software that Git is not necessarily built specifically for. There comes to be some conflicts. Video games, especially 3D ones, will have very large files, especially in the world of high resolution. Or if you have really large scene files, for example, anything that's larger than 100 megabytes is just not supported by Git straight up. They do have alternative solutions for that called Git LFS, which is their large file storage. I'm not going to get to that today. I'll touch on it a tiny bit at the end because I do have some resources that can help set that up. But I'm not going to dive into that too deeply today. The other thing that really pains me in particular when I work with Unity is that game engines create a lot of hidden files and a lot of meta files that it uses to perform its operations that just really don't need to be included in the process and just create a bunch of noise and clutter in your project. So we'll talk about how we can kind of filter those out, and you can just keep the really the only the important things kind of at your forefront. So what is Git really? Technically, it is a source control program. Again, it's too broad of a topic for me to really cover with great respect today. Specifically, some of the terms is Git is the technology. Bitbucket is the service provider of Git that I will talk about today. GitHub is another service provider, so it's a competitor to Bitbucket. So if you've ever heard of GitHub, it is kind of the parallel of Bitbucket for today's purposes. All I really want to talk about with Git as a technology is that it is used for versioning, which basically means that it will track your files that you want to keep track of your changes to. And then this can be done to revert changes that you've made to previous states. If you mess something up or make changes that you don't like, you can usually go back. And then the biggest feature, of course, being the ability to merge changes between users into a centralized location, thus really allowing you to kind of unlock the full power of your collaboration. And then if you're using a service provider like Bitbucket, it can be kind of stored online. We'll come back to this later throughout the demonstration as well. But Bitbucket has a website with a web interface where you can kind of manage your repositories. You can kind of see that all of my projects are up here. One brief note that is worth mentioning is that while the nature of Git does lend itself to serving as a backup and a way to transfer your data between machines through the service, it's not recommended for actual backups. The nature of files becoming corrupted or sometimes services are discontinued or something like that. It's not relied upon. It's not encouraged that you rely upon Git for this. So it's encouraged to take backups in a separate workflow. And so before I get to the demonstration, I want to get through some of the ugly terminology. I really tried to simplify this talk in a way that we can get away from a lot of it, but I can really only abstract it to a certain point before I start to lose my meaning a little bit. So I'll try to fire through this real quick, and again, this will all be available to you post talk, but we kind of just got to rifle through this real quick. So if you'll bear with me for a second, Bitbucket and Source Tree are the tools that I'll be discussing in this example. They are both products owned by a company called Atlassian. Bitbucket is the service provider or the server-side service that you will use to store your repositories remotely. Source Tree is a visual tool for working with Git locally on your computer. And you can use this to commit files and manage your branches and anything else that you would do on the user side of Git. Going through our terminology, a repository is a Git project, like wholesale at the top level. When you create a repository, it will create a special .git file in the parent, in the parent directory of your project. So I'll show that later during the demonstration, and you can kind of visualize kind of a little bit of how the technology works. A versioned file is any file that you have told Git to keep a history for and track changes. Conversely, of course, an unversioned file is one that Git will not track changes for. And this is desired in some cases, such as the hidden files that I mentioned earlier. It just keeps the repository much cleaner. A .git ignore is a special file that you can put in your Git project that will let you kind of specify rules for which files should not be versioned. And I will show you a great git ignore template that the Unity community has built for when you're getting started with it to really help make sure that your repository stays clean. Because if you start committing files without using a git ignore, it can be really hard to undo changes once a file is versioned. Git does not forget about it very easily. It is possible, but it's a little bit painful. A branch, I won't get into branching too deep today, but it is a fundamental concept in version control. It's effectively a copy of your project that is isolated from the main body of work to allow you to kind of work on features to their completion without actually having it affect the master copy, so to speak, of your project. So if things go awry or whatever else might happen, you can kind of have that isolated layer of protection to kind of make sure that the project is really only being merged with things that are things that everybody's happy with. The process of merging is a bit of a multi-step process. So there's staging, or the staging stage area, where Git will be able to tell you which files it has identified changes for. You will have to use this list of identified files to specify which ones you actually want Git to version and keep track of. And so the staging area is where you select those files. A commit is where you effectively push the green light for Git to track the files that you've identified in your staging area. And so once you click commit with your selected files from the staging area, the changes in that history become official, more or less. And then a message is just a short text string that you'll type out to accompany a commit. It's a mandatory part of the technology, and so we'll see all that later. When it comes to repositories, there's the remote repository, which is the server side, something that you're pushing to or pulling from. And then there's the local, which is the state of the project on your machine. And so these two will need to be connected and synchronized from time to time as your workflow demands. And then on the user side, these are the actions that you would generally do through your normal workflow. So, a lot of this stuff is set up. A couple of things notwithstanding there. But when it comes to everyday work in Git, it's generally going to be these things. So a push is the act of taking your local commits and pushing them to the server so that the server version of the project or the remote version of the project is, synchronized with the changes that you have made in your local repository. A pull is the opposite. So if you have a teammate who has pushed various changes to the remote, those are not automatically reflected on your local version of the project. And so you'll need to run a pull to copy down all of those changes to synchronize your local with the remote. A merge. So as mentioned earlier, generally you'll want to use branches to create features. And sometimes when different team members are working on the same files, a merge will have to happen at some point to basically determine what the ultimately desired version of the file is going to look like. And so this is just a normal part of the process as you effectively, when you push, it merges the branches as well. I'm oversimplifying a bit, so apologies for the people who are very technical. But yeah, you have to merge your branches to, have them be synchronized with each other. And then there's the merge conflict scenario, which is generally, you want to avoid this as much as possible. But when you have cases where multiple people have worked on the same file in different branches, sometimes the case will arise where the different users have made changes in the same places on the same file. And in those cases, Git doesn't know automatically how it wants to perform that merge. And so that is called a merge conflict. And it will require some manual intervention to kind of specify and walk Git through what the final merge is intended to look like. So I'll kind of go through some best practices on how to avoid merge conflicts, but we'll talk about that later. So all the difficult terminology behind us, we can kind of jump into our technical demonstration. Gonna break for water for 1 second. Okay, so one caveat here that I want to point out is, where is it in my outline? I'm skipping a little bit. Where did I say? Oh, it's actually right here. So for the sake of our talk, we will assume that a project is already started, and I actually already have one kind of at the ready. Just a really vague, overly simplified Pac-Man type of game that I made. What the project is not what's important here. We'll kind of go through what the process of taking an already existing project that is not set up with Git, and then we will, of course, perform that process here. So initializing the repository is the first step in incorporating your project into Git, and it can, of course, be done before you even start your project, which is generally what I would recommend. I'll talk about more with the best practices at the end. But it can be done at any point in the project lifecycle. Obviously, that's what we're doing here. So we'll need to create a local repository. So we can do that through source tree. So we'll pull that up. And what we're going to want to do is click so this is source tree, of course. This is kind of it's a standalone application on your computer, and you can use it to manage all of your local versions of your repos. We'll want to click clone/new, and we're going to create a new repository. The only thing you really need to configure here is the destination path. So what we want to do is we want to find where our Unity project is. So I have that right here. We'll copy this, and we'll drop it in the destination path. You can customize the name a bit if you would like. One thing I'll point out here is you can see here that the .git folder that I mentioned when I was going through the terminology on what a repo is not present here. But we'll create our Git repo. And some things have happened, and then of course, here we are. So this is officially a local Git repository. It is not connected to a remote repository, so we'll have to do that next. But I mean, of course, you don't have to be connected to a remote repository to use Git. There's still benefits to having even just a local repository. You can still do all the versioning and the history tracking locally, even if you're not connected to a remote. But if you want to unlock the power of collaborating with others, especially in our virtual world nowadays, doing things remotely, we'll have to do that step for getting the remote set up. So everything I did just now in source tree is covered in this section here. We're going to move over to creating the remote side, which is done in Bitbucket, which is our service provider. So we'll hop over here, and Bitbucket is free up to a certain point. It limits how many collaborators you can have. There are some limitations to it, but it's free to use for getting started. So this is generally what I recommend. We'll want to create and then click repository. There are a couple of required fields here. A workspace. It's just kind of a way for grouping your projects. You want to associate to a project as well. I have several, but I'll just use untitled for now. And then we'll want to name our remote repository as well. You can set it to private so that people can't see it out in the public if you want. That's kind of up to you. Description is optional. I'll skip it for now and just leave something real basic, I guess. You can choose things like your language if you want. Only these top fields are really required. We'll hit create repository. Oh, shoot. One thing that I meant to highlight here is when you, I can actually probably just go do it again. There's this setting right here, include a git ignore. I recommend that you leave this as yes. The git ignore file is, of course, what I talked about earlier, which kind of provides the regex rules on which types of files should not be versioned by Git. And actually, if I go back to the repository that we just created, so here's the IGDA TC, repo that I just created. This is the entirety of my repository. It's just the git ignore file that I had Bitbucket automatically create for me. And you can kind of see what these look like. So anything with a .class file, for example, would be ignored by our git ignore here. Okay, so that covers creating the remote repository. Now we want to connect our remote to our local through SourceTree. So we'll kind of go through that again in SourceTree. So we have the settings folder here, and I have multiple local repos open, so you want to make sure you have yours selected here. We'll go to settings, and this is already set to remotes, so you can configure your remote here, and so we'll want to add it. And we need the URL, which can be done multiple ways, but the way I would generally do it is this clone button. If you click clone and you change your protocol to HTTPS, you get the URL to your repository right here. We don't want this git clone part. This is something that we would use if we were using a command line, which we're not doing in this case. So for what I'm doing here, the URL alone is sufficient. We'll drop that in here. And then we'll click OK. And now we are connected to the remote repository with our local repository. Okay, so that covers pretty much all of this, I think. Yeah. So at this stage, we haven't done any pushing or pulling between our remote and our local, and that's among the reasons I recommend doing it right away. When you initialize your remote repository right away, you have a blank slate. There are no real merge conflicts that can arise. But what we're gonna want to do to get these things working together is we're gonna want to start with a fetch, which just kind of pulls down all of the files from our remote repository. And so we'll let that process complete. And then I think I have us doing a merge after that. We'll do a pull. A pull is basically a fetch and a merge. We'll want to specify our branch. I'm not getting too deep into branching here in this particular talk, so everything is just done through master, which is the default branch when you create repositories. Generally, you're not committing things directly to master because master is generally seen as kind of the truth of your project. But again, for the sake of this, we're just going to stick it to the mainline branch. Okay, now that I've pulled, we should see our git ignore file. And if I open this up, it should look pretty familiar to what's in our remote, right? So this is the first kind of practical way that I'm able to show you that we have these two things talking to each other. So we have, you can see right here, the rules for class are exactly as they are remotely. So this is the point where I generally recommend that somebody would use the template for the git ignore that was created by the Unity community. That link is in here somewhere. Yeah, right here. So we'll follow that. And so this takes us to the GitHub page where this is stored. You can just copy the contents here. Go back to your git ignore file and overwrite it and save it. So then when I refresh all this, everything should be abiding by the rules of our git ignore file. Here you can kind of see the changes that I made. So when I talk about versioning, Git tracks all of the things that in red here I've removed from the previous state of the file, as well as all the things in green to the new state of the file. So this will be really important with our git ignore. So at this point, we'll want to do our first push. And so we can do that by selecting all of these. Oh, and this is our staging area right down here that I mentioned earlier. So these are all the changes that Git has identified. And in the case of us starting to work with Git in the project, everything in my Unity folder that isn't excluded by the git ignore rules should be showing up in our diff down here. So yeah, that's great. We'll want to select all of these and add them to the staged area. So these are all staged. So when I hit commit here in a little bit, they will all be committed to the Git history. And so for a first commit, something simple. This is the message box. You want to type in your message. Something simple for your first commit, like initial commit, is generally acceptable. We'll click commit, and everything looks good there. And then whenever we're finally ready to push our branch to the remote version of the repository, we can click push, and we'll choose master, and we will push it. Now, if we head over to Bitbucket and see things on the remote side, here's all of our Unity files. So here's assets. There's my scripts, just like I'd see them in Unity. So yeah, I mean, at that point, we're all set up. From now on, you can use your remote and local repositories. They've been connected, and any changes you make to local copies of your files should be detected in SourceTree. So if I head over here and I decide that I want to change my background from green to blue and save the file, we go back to SourceTree and we see that my sample scene is detected as a change by Git. And if I wanted to commit that again, of course, I would stage it, write my message, commit it, and then whenever we're ready, we can push it. One thing that kind of sucks is that scene files in Unity are serialized, so they're not really human readable. So if I was to go in here, it'd be pretty hard for me to show you what exactly changed. I could change a code file, I guess, to make it a little bit more visual. Simple code file. If I wanted to change the player script. I could just add a comment in here. Save it. We'll go back to our staging area. You can see that my player script is detected as a change. Hello IGDA was detected as a line that was added. And then we're kind of following the same process. Stage it, message, commit, and push. Then if I refresh this file on the remote side, you should see my greeting. So you can kind of see how useful it is. And then of course, if you are working with a friend, your friend could do a similar process to clone your repository on their side. No sharing of physical medium required. And we could do that, of course, by doing clone. And so this time, your friend is not creating the repository. They are cloning the one that you created. And then, of course, we want to use this clone with the HTTPS as our protocol. Give that to our friend to type into the source path, at which point your friend will want to specify a space on the hard drive on their hard drive for their local repo to be stored in. And then they clone it. And so, of course, this would generally happen on a different computer. So it looks a little goofy when I'm cloning the same repo twice on one computer. But then these are in sync with each other. So if I was to go to pretend we're on my friend's computer for a second here, we go to that spot on the hard drive that I specified as the destination folder. We can again see all of our script files, source scene files, all of it. And then, of course, they can follow the same process for pulling, pushing, and merging. So a couple of get best practices. I don't have a ton, but I would say create repositories as soon as possible. The blank slate makes it as easy as it possibly can be to create a repository. Create branches for every feature. This will allow them to be worked to completion before being kind of merged into that master branch, which is, again, the truth. And avoid modifying files that your teammates are actively working on at the same time to avoid merge conflicts. And I know this is heavily circumstantial, especially as teams get larger and certain files become more important, and all those other things that can come into consideration. But then, of course, at that point, you can work together on your merge conflicts as well. Again, Git LFS is something that is very useful for video games in particular because of how large their files can become. I didn't want to get into that in this talk, just given how brief I wanted to keep this. But this is a great resource that I have here in my references for how you can go ahead and do that. And so you can kind of do that process here. And then I, of course, after I submitted this talk with IGDA, but obviously well before today, this great YouTube channel called Infallible Code, who could not recommend any higher, especially for people that are much more technical like myself, created this video a couple weeks ago on a lot of the same steps. He doesn't use SourceTree. He uses the CLI. I know I definitely wanted to use the visual tool in SourceTree to kind of help less technical people follow along, hopefully a little bit more easily. That was my goal. I hope that I accomplished that to some effect. But I just wanted to provide these other resources as well. They're great resources, so I hope you get something out of them. That concludes my talk, actually. I definitely wanted to keep this pretty focused, but I know there's probably a handful of questions. Happy to stick around and answer any questions that are here already. And I am definitely interested in doing follow-up talks to talk about more complicated scenarios if the interest is there. Obviously, people can let me know on I guess what the interest level is on that. So yeah, that's all I got. Any questions or anything?
All right, thanks so much, Ryan. It will take the stream a little bit of time to catch up with you,
Sure thing.
asking if there's any questions. So,
Yep.
So you said this document will be available. Are you going to link that in the Discord when
Sure, I can do that.
you're done? Yeah, so that way folks can check it out.
Which channel is best for that?
Oh
Or...
man, I think I would put it either, you could drop it in the lounge text, which is like if people are down talking about it, or in the
Sure.
general discussion, or both. So yeah, that way folks can access it.
There you go.
All right, let's see. Are we getting any questions here? Oh, of course, Slumkey over there talking about Git. Lane said thank you. Very clear talk. as someone who is self-taught, you filled in some holes in his knowledge.
Awesome. That's the goal.
All right. Oh, and then Mark, put your outline in the YouTube. It looks like maybe we don't have any questions,
Sure thing.
but I do appreciate it. We don't have a ton of technical talks lately. It's been a lot of more like design and stuff like that. So it was nice to get some coding stuff in here.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I appreciate the refresher because I haven't used Git in probably like 3 years because I haven't been working on anything. So it was nice to kind of remember that in case I get involved in any projects coming up.
Yeah, all good.
So
That's the goal. Definitely want this to be a resource for people. So any ideas on how it could be made better, I'm all ears.
awesome. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to say that we are good and that we should head over to the voice channels for some after stream discussions. So I'm going to head off and switch over to the St. Paul room because that's my side of the river. But thank you again so much, Ryan, and
Yeah.
we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, happy to be there.